Welcome to Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever's On the Wing podcast. Buckle up and ride shotgun as we cover everything you need to know about the uplands, the habitat, the hunting, and of course, your favorite bird dogs.
We invited the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever family of members, chapter volunteers, partners, and social media followers to ride shotgun with us for this year's Rooster Road Trip across the Dakotas. For this 12th installment of Rooster Road Trip, Andrew changed the rules. Well, we all changed the rules, but Andrew changed the rules. Instead of an almost live event, we turned Rooster Road Trip into a month-long series with the goal of upping the ante on our video production. This guy right here. The feedback along the way has been tremendous. Thanks to all of you for watching, reading, listening, and commenting. Special thanks to the hundreds of people who have become Pheasants Forever members during this year's Rooster Road Trip. And thanks to our sponsoring partners who have made Rooster Road Trip for 12 straight years an incredibly important revenue stream for our wildlife habitat conservation mission. Those sponsors include Browning, official apparel and shotgun manufacturer of Rooster Road Trip, Garmin, providing all the e-collars and watches for our dogs, Apple Autos, providing the Ford F-150 truck, Ruff Land Kennels, where all our dogs stayed safe as we drove from state to state, SoundGear hearing protection, and our buddy Lance Kramer for taking good care of our hearing, Thorogood boots, the official boot of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever and the Rooster Road Trip, South Dakota Tourism, our national sponsor, and Federal Premium Ammunition, the only shotgun shell ever fired on Rooster Road Trip in 12 years. Today, we've assembled the Twin Cities-based members of this year's Rooster Road Trip for our first ever video recorded podcast to answer questions that poured in from our Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever social media channels about this year's Rooster Road Trip. So without further ado, allow me to introduce the participants, which I've sort of done already. Andrew Vavra, sitting to my left here, is the Director of Marketing. I called him the Kirk Cousins, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady.
Not Aaron Rodgers.
Not Aaron Rodgers.
Be careful of comparisons. Yeah, that's rough.
Who is your favorite quarterback of all time?
Fifth grade me would say Dan Marino.
Okay.
Well, Dan Marino.
I was thinking you were gonna say Dante Culpepper, but you lived in Seattle for a time.
I lived in Seattle for a little while, but I'm basically Minnesota born and bred. So I have that miserable sports complex going in my mind in terms of we'll always fail all the time, which is probably why I loved Dan Marino growing up.
Not Hasselbeck, huh?
Nope. Dan Marino all the way.
Dan Marino, all right. So the official Rooster Road Trip quarterback and the voice of all the Rooster Road Trip videos, which have turned out absolutely incredible. Thanks to the guy on my right, Aaron Blackschmidt, the video production specialist for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, a photographer. And I threw this in here, our very own Master Control Supervisor, sorry.
Right.
I don't even know what that means. I just hear it on KFAD every time I'm listening to a Vikings game, and they have a Master Control Supervisor. So that's what you are now. That's your new title.
All right, let's make it official.
I'm not sure why there's a Vikings thread throughout the beginning here, but there is at the moment. And then Logan Hinners, you've been, I don't know, this is like podcast number 4 for you. You're on with Tony Peterson and Shed Hunting with the Dawkins, and then we've done a couple of Rooster Road Trip
so
podcasts.
That's probably about right.
You're almost like a co-host.
No, not even close. I'll leave that to you.
Graphic design manager, photographer, and a guy that I value because of your philosophy of F8 and B there. So There's another podcast you were on with the Eric Peterson.
I was going to say that. Probably give a shout out to Eric for that one. That's a pretty clever saying, but he's a friend of Pheasants Forever and contributor. But yeah, F8 and be there. That's kind of my job on this trip, and seems like an appropriate time to thank Aaron and Hunter probably too for stepping up and taking a few more stills. So I was afforded the ability to shoot the shotgun a little more this trip, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
That Maxis, did it miss? Did you miss at all?
I did. Yep, I did miss
once.
I guess I didn't keep track.
You don't have to answer that.
It was a pretty sweet shooting shotgun. So whoever comes away at the end with that giveaway shotgun, the Browning Maxis, you're going to be awfully happy. So
just for folks that maybe didn't listen to the Eric Peterson podcast, just a short summary of what F8 and B there means.
It's in the manual camera world, it's a setting on your camera. It's just kind of, you got to be at the spot, and F8, you're in focus, take the shot, just be there, capture
live
that
in the moment.
Yep.
That's something that haunts me from time to time. I get in my own head. Not that you guys would have seen that traveling with me for a week at a time over the course of the last 12 years. Anyways, thank you all to the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever Upland community, social followers on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, watching all these videos on YouTube and sending in some really thought-provoking questions. So we've broken up, or Andrew has broken up, the questions in a couple different categories. Dogs, hunting, gear, kind of a hodgepodge, potpourri, mixed bag, general, miscellaneous, you pick your term. And then we've got a couple specific questions for Marissa and Renee, a couple of our female co-workers who are along. Marissa lives in Nebraska. Renee lives in North Dakota. So they weren't here to be able to record the podcast in person with us, but we got some very specific questions that they've provided us answers for. So we'll dive into those. Without further ado, let's tackle. Thanks for letting us use your basement, by the way.
You're welcome.
Let's dive into the dogs question category first. So up first, Terry Crosby writes in, what was hunting over new dogs and breeds like for everyone? Was there a new breed someone hunted with during this trip that they never hunted with before? So I'm going to throw this at Andrew. I think the place to start is kind of recounting all the different breeds that we hunted.
Yeah, this is going to be a test of my faculties here. It's a little memory game. Okay, so starting in southwest North Dakota, we had Riggins, the setter.
Mm-hmm.
We had Quill, the German wirehair. We had Bridger, the field-bred English cocker. We had Lola and Molly, the two golden retrievers, the field line of Goldens. He's pretty proud of that.
You're hot out of the gates.
And then we had our usual traveling circus of dogs, right? So I had the French Brit, Baxter. Logan has the tried and true lab, Aspen. You had your two stellar GSPs, Gitchy and Esky. And then let's see here. Oh, Marissa had was it Reese?
Reese.
Yep, she brought Reese. Yep, the GSP. So that was the North Dakota leg. And then so all of our dogs, including Marissa's, traveled to South Dakota after that, which we were then joined by Jake Hansen, our South Dakota regional rep. And he was also team GSP, GSP Jep.
Jep, yep.
And then to round it out with the All-American Yellow Lab again, we met up with Ben Lardy the last day and his Yellow Lab Woodrow.
From Lonesome Dove.
I think that's all.
I think you nailed it.
I know I have a computer in front of me, but I'm not reading that. So if I missed any, I apologize.
That was good.
A lot of dogs.
Did you perceive there to be any complications with hunting that many different dogs that didn't know each other, flushers versus pointers?
That's a really good question. And it's something that kind of takes away some of my sleep leading up to the trip, because when you're piecing together the team that's going to be traveling through the country and also who you're meeting up with, a lot of it is kind of playing Shackleton in terms of like personalities that will mesh and who's actually going to have a good time under some stressful situations, and are their dogs up to snuff, or will they at least be good citizens? None of us take our dogs seriously in terms of, we're not like overly hardcore, like my dog is a machine, it has to be perfect. They're members of our families first and foremost. So as long as they can get along, we really have no issues. So it was great coming into North Dakota, having never hunted with Quill, who's a young pup, having never hunted with Riggins or Bridger, and just seeing all the dogs just be bird dogs. And there was quite the display of skill sets. When I first got so I have an 11.5-year-old lab at home, and she's my first bird dog. And I went that route because I love to chase ducks. I was still new to upland hunting. I kind of wanted a dog that could do it all. What we saw were a couple dogs that are versatile in that aspect. They can thrive in a lot of environments. But we also saw some pretty specialized hunting techniques. Riggins the setter, flying 500 yards out. And then my little Brit thinking suddenly he was a setter. That was fun to watch. But and then you have the Cocker Spaniel, which is the tighter working. She almost heels him until she gets into the cover she wants, and then he's a closer working flushing dog. So it's pretty fun to see all the different techniques and the specialties, and watching these different dogs all excel in different environments. And then from there, you're almost thinking, well, what's my favorite way to hunt? Like, what's my favorite terrain? And my next dog, I'm probably going to have a bit more specialized to that, and just be able to excel in the environments in which I love most, versus trying to be okay at everything. And that's kind of a shift in philosophy for me personally. And that's 100% due to watching all these dogs on the road trip.
One thing that just kind of a final thought on that question, that if you're in a big group and you desire to break up into smaller groups, when you have a variety of dogs, it does create a natural, pointers are going to go that way, flushers are going to go that way. And you don't have to worry about anybody's personalities being hurt about, or who wants to go where, because just two different styles. It's like, I hunted with Renee and Marissa a lot the first couple of days, because it was just, okay, pointers go that way, right? And Logan and the Goldens and, the flushing breeds go the other direction. And it's kind of just a natural break for hunting in smaller groups.
Yeah, and it makes it easy to split up. But one thing I always get a kick out of it seems like on a yearly basis, we'll see a question bubble up on social, or someone will actually contact us in terms of, what do you guys feel about hunting flushers and pointers together? I'm like, what about it? Like, who cares? But that's because we kind of don't take ourselves super seriously. So if, Bridger or Aspen like blows up one of your dog's points, you're not going to lose your marbles, right? But I almost love it, because generally speaking, the pointers are working further out. They're covering more ground, but at a faster clip. And so you have them kind of vacuum up a larger area, but it's not as precise. So behind them, then you have the flushing or retrieving breeds that are working a lot closer, a lot more thoroughly. It's almost like having two different types of vacuums at home. You have your Roomba, right? Which will be like the pointing breed, and they're just zooming all over the place, bouncing into things, just kind of like sucking up dust here and there. But then like the handheld is the retrievers. That's like the precision. Like if it's there, you're gonna find it. So it's a weird analogy, but like that's what came to mind, and like it kind of works.
Pulling a lot of dog hair out of your vacuum lately, huh?
I have 2 dogs and a cat at home. You wouldn't believe it.
I don't even know if I have a vacuum at home.
Andrew makes a very good point about that. As a flushing dog owner, my entire life, I started hunting with pointers, obviously, when I started at Pheasants Forever, hunting with you and some other pointing dog owners. It was a little intimidating, especially when I saw big ranging dogs. I'm sitting there thinking, like, why am I even running my dog? These dogs are, 500 yards out, and here he is 40. I want him working close. But to Andrew's point, just through different hunts and situations, we're all familiar with cagey roosters. They'll circle back. The pointing dogs certainly don't pin every bird, and it works well, I think, having kind of those different layers of of dogs working. It's pretty cool to watch. I think from a flushing dog perspective, just being self-aware and having control of your dog, and just knowing the group and the other dogs, it's just that respect thing. If I see one of your dogs go on point, I'll do everything I can in my power to get my dog to heel, over by me. That's your bird.
I think that's a good an important point, because as a pointing dog person, you do worry about a flushing dog pressuring a dog on point, and then they start to creep, and then they start to break point because of competition. So you do see me, gravitating towards the wings, right? Hunting to the left or right of the group. And to Andrew's dismay, sometimes that leads me further and farther away. But it does, there are ways to hunt. I mean, all my dogs have been used to hunting with people with flushers, because some of my best friends have labs and goldens. And so you just sort of pick your spots. Generally, it allows me to hunt outside the cattails, which is a positive too. I can hunt some bigger ground, some bigger grass. All right, let's move to question number 2 here from Rick Diaz. What items besides food and water do you bring to care for your dog? What's in your hunting vest versus what's in your truck? Logan, why don't you tackle that one? What's Aspen, your lab, have in the back of your vest or in your truck with you?
Yeah. So I always carry a first aid kit. I apologize, don't remember the brand. That's one we carried in our warehouse here, but it's equipped with everything. You hope you don't need it, but it's always, it's a must-have in the back of the truck for sure. I carry a few things, like a trap release gizmo in my vest, and a wire cutter. Just a few little things in my vest. I always have booties packed. You never know when you're going to get a situation when you need them. When we've hunted some places, further south, southwest, we've gotten into pretty bad spots with sandburs, and the booties were a lifesaver. I also carry those just if you have a paw injury. You can put a booty on, usually help them out a little bit. I carry athletic tape. That's probably about it. Just your normal grooming stuff, brush. I always carry extra towels. I got like this dog chamois that actually worked pretty slick. It's just
to pull burrs off?
No, so when we hunted, what was it, Wednesday? We had the all-day rain in South Dakota. Yep. I was able to just chamois him off, so he was, he's pretty dry before I put him in the kennel. It just helps him regulate his body. He's not so cold sitting in the kennel, and so just things like that. I would say is what I pack.
Anything extra from you, Andrew?
Yeah, I always have a Leatherman multi-tool. So on me personally, even in the sandhills earlier this season, I saw that put to use 2 different times due to porkies. So that's definitely something I carry. +1 for the booties. I always have them on me. I don't leave them in the truck. They weigh nothing, and as Logan alluded to, you hit that one section of the field where your dog just freezes, and then you pull them off and you think they're okay, and then 20 yards later it freezes again. It's just so much better just to have them on you. Also, athletic tape in the field, but that's about it, because that and some gauze that could hopefully get you back to the truck if you need anything more major than that. In the 12 seasons of the Rooster Road Trip, there's only been one instance where we actually had to use a stapler,
right?
But we were glad when we actually had it. So it's pretty light, pretty basic. As dogs get older, you can get into some of the supplements and things that give them right at the end of the day to kind of help them continue moving forward for the rest of the trip. But I'm pretty light and basic because I'm not a vet. So one thing that is critical for anybody who's actually taking a road trip is take the 5 minutes and Google some veterinarian clinics in the same area that you're going to be, just so they're in your back pocket, because if anything were to happen that would require a vet visit, you're already going to be so frazzled. And if it's your dog, then you're going to be barking orders to other people because you're going to be worried about your dog. Just have those numbers in your phone already. So it's just a one click and dial type situation. So it's one less thing to worry about.
So Aaron, I've got, you're going to contribute to the dog component here. And you didn't know this because you don't have a dog, but you do something on every hunt that I greatly appreciate as a dog owner. You know what that is?
What's that?
you always have extra water with you.
Oh,
So as folks listening, right, if you have significant other, family, friend, somebody just carrying a camera, documenting the hunt along for the walk, if you can, stuff an extra bottle of water in your vest, in your backpack, whatever because we dealt with 70-degree
it was
temperatures, and I'd run out of water every single time. I'm like, Aaron, help me out, brother. And you did.
Yeah.
So that's something that I sincerely appreciate.
Well, you got it.
If folks are watching, listening, that maybe they don't carry a shotgun, carry an extra bottle of water. Makes a big difference.
Well, on that same note, one thing that Logan brought this year that I hadn't seen deployed in person was Ruff Land Kennels makes a watering hole. It's not necessarily for the back of your truck, although you certainly could use it then. But where it really shines is the hotel room.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's this little gravity-fed box where you can just fill it up and forget it, and then it always has like the same amount of water in the actual lip section where the dogs can drink. And our two dogs are in the same hotel room. They're just gravitating back and forth to that. But why I like it is I travel on the cheap. And so it's really easy just to grab that ice bucket that every hotel room comes with, just fill it up in the
You're that guy?
Oh yeah, fill it up in the bathtub, right? And that's fine. I forgot my bowl outside, whatever. I got this little ice bucket. If you've ever knocked over an ice bucket full of water in a hotel room, or your dog has, that can be a big deal. The watering hole will take care of that. You don't have to worry about the dogs knocking it over or anything, and they always have water throughout the night when they're waking up at 2 a.m. anyway, just trying to stretch their legs.
Well, final thought on this, and it's probably the question I get asked most on social media about gear. It's what kind of brand or what brand of vests are my dogs wearing? Because every photo of my dogs on Insta or Twitter, Facebook has a dog vest on, and folks probably have heard the story before. I had a pup while I was hunting grouse about 10 years ago, run into a tree that ruptured a carotid artery before I had been using vests, and she died really fast. So from that point forward, every hunt I go on, my dog either wears a Kuga brand or a Silmar brand vest. The Silmar is a little bit for narrower breeds. The Kuga, Cuga, is for deeper chested dogs. And some people worry about that vest in the opening in the neck, like actually funneling things in and causing problems. I've never had that happen in 10 years, and I've witnessed it protect my dog's safety and their lives. And they're not sponsors of the road trip, just a public service announcement that you got to get them that fit right, otherwise they can chafe the underarms. But I'm a big believer in dog vests. It protects the heck out of them, and they work their hearts out for you. So it's worth the $30.
Well, it goes beyond safety too, and it's something that I need to get better at. I'll admit this. There are definitely some people who are like, well, I don't hunt the Northwoods. I'm not worried about that. I don't encounter much barbed wire. I'm not worried about that. For me, I was pulling my hair out and my dog's hair out on a recent trip back in South Dakota when he decided to take a trip through what must have been one of the most burr-rich environments I've ever encountered.
Yeah.
And as someone who has a feathered dog, the vest that I had in the truck, had he been wearing it, would have saved us a lot of consternation. It was about an hour back at camp just dealing with a whiny, wiggly dog covered in burrs. And I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to tell the wife about this one because she always tells me to put on the vest so he doesn't get burrs, and here we are.
And something as simple as that orange, visualize and being able to see them, particularly grouse hunting in the woods, darker woods. But, even just running the prairie, I can, short hair, tick, liver ticking, that's somewhat camouflaged. You see that blaze orange and you're like, okay, I know exactly where that pup is working. So a lot of benefit for it. Probably shows up better on film too, right?
Yeah, I would agree. It's easy to pick them out.
All right. Next question comes from Manny Manuel. When hunting new terrain, how do you help your dogs transition to working closer or further, depending on where you're at. I hunt quail in Southern California, but will be traveling to South Dakota in December. Logan, you hunt a lot of different areas of the country. Do you have to do anything to correct aspen on distance, or do they kind of innately know?
That's a good question, I guess. I don't know if I'm the right one to answer it, obviously, but it seems like my lab kind of just innately knows, and I think the cover kind of dictates a little bit. If he's in cattails, he's certainly not pushing out as far as he would in eastern Montana.
Yeah.
And with that, with the training, I just try keeping him 40 and in, and that's just kind of our philosophy. So I guess that's how we function, but I don't know if that answers it.
I think it's very different in the pointing dog world. But at the same time, it's just, you got to let your dog just be a dog. Whether you're going to the Northwoods or the Sandhills or somewhere in between, your dog's naturally going to probably change its territory it's covering based on the landscape. Like when I'm in the Sandhills, Baxter's a country mile away. When I'm in the Northwoods, he's probably within 100 yards somewhere, even if I can't see him. And that just happens naturally. But something that I'm currently learning to deal with as, I'm still relatively new to the pointing dog world. And you've seen this transition, you've seen lots of frustrations of me trying to, become a better dog handler and something that
God forbid Allie has the controls.
Yeah. So it's just, I started with the lab, I took it out of the box, it hunted great, end of story. This is a little different now. One thing Emily actually touched on when we were walking through the field, because I'm always picking people's brains who have great dogs, just in terms of how are you working? What are you looking for? How's this terrain affecting your dog? And she just kind of stopped me a little bit. She's like, listen, I don't care where he is as long as he's hunting. As long as that dog is out there searching for birds, I don't care where he is, because that's what he's here to do. Me walking any one direction, what do I know that he doesn't, or what? He's the one that's going to find him.
She's wise beyond her years.
So it's as long as he's hunting, and I know generally where he is, look at the Garmin GPS.
Yeah. I
don't care. And that's something that I need to get better at, because it seems like every time I put my dog down, he's like, cool, you're here. Someone's over there. I'm over there. And it's I'm so used to having the quartering lab, like what Logan's talking about, just to have my dog just kind of shoot, blow off. And then just, he's hunting. I can tell he's hunting, but he's nowhere even near me in the lineup of people. That's kind of the internal struggle. It's he's doing what he's bred to do. He's doing the right thing. It's just that I don't have my dog coursing in front of me. And so that's the weird group dynamic that I as a hunter need to get better at, versus, we both like to hunt in small groups or solo, because then you're just going to follow them.
Yep.
And so that's where some group dynamics come into play, and just let your dog be a dog and have fun. And that's easier said than done. I fully will admit that.
I think that's great advice. I'll tack on, the birds are going to teach the dog how far to range, and the terrain is. I 100% believe that dogs kind of, at least as they get older, right? And you open up the kennel and grass, open horizon. We're gonna hunt pheasants or sharptails today. Okay. And I witnessed that. I got on a horse with a buddy when we went to Montana, and all of a sudden, my pups are ranging 3 times as far. He's like, well, I can see Dad, he's on a horse, he's gonna be able to get to me. Then I go grouse hunting, and they're much closer to 200-300 yards, and or closer than that. So I really believe that your dog, Manny, going from California to South Dakota, it might take them a couple hours, but they're going to figure out what the right distance is. Their dogs are smarter than most people. I should know. All right, let's round out our dog section here. With Darwin, our Pheasants Forever chapter president in Wessington Springs, South Dakota. He sends in a message or a question. What tips do you have for hunters and their bird dogs when trying to find a poorly hit bird? Got any tips for him, Logan?
Yeah. So poorly hit bird, I'd say the first thing you want to do is get a good mark. Hopefully someone in the group can mark the bird, and you want that person just to kind of stand pat, right, while the rest of the group maybe moves in, and they just keep their eye on that mark, on that spot, help guide the group and the dogs in. And that point, you go in and the people should kind of stay back and let the dogs do the dog work, try recovering that bird. I guess I've found you get a bunch of people in there mingling around, talking, it becomes a distraction. You're leaving excess scent, you're making things more difficult on yourself. So if you can get the dogs close to where they need to be and then just let them do the work, that's when we've had the best success, I guess.
I think that's 100% right on. There's one thing that I'd add, and it's particularly if you're hunting solo, take your orange hat off, where you identify the mark and hang it on a hat or a piece of brush, and then move towards that mark. And that allows you to go back to that spot if necessary and to sort of replay the scenario. Hopefully you won't need to, but your hat's orange, you're going to be able to find it.
Right.
Where did we just see online, Logan? I think you and I were commenting on this. Someone,
like a clip,
yeah,
right?
Someone's basically using a chip clip, like a miniature chip clip for a bag of chips, and they tied a piece of like blaze orange flagging to it, and they just keep that in their pocket. And so, like, instead of just like throwing your hat on the ground, they'll just clip that to the grass or whatever cover they're in, and then use that as their marker. And I was like, well, that's pretty ingenious. I'm gonna steal that one.
A walleye fisherman figured that out.
Right.
All right. I want to take a moment here and thank South Dakota Department of Tourism and South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. There's still time to plan your South Dakota pheasant adventure in the pheasant hunting capital of the country. Find places to stay and season information at huntthegreatest.com. Next up, we're going to go to the hunting category, kind of the meat and potatoes of the podcast here. Philip Young writes in, what factors, wind, food, cover, etc., do you consider, and how do you combine them to create your strategy for pushing pieces of land? Do you break a plot of land into sections and push these differently? All right, Andrew, you were the quarterback deciding where we were hunting, how we were going to hunt, how long to stay in the field. How'd you decide all that?
When it comes to upland birds, pheasants are almost relatively easy in theory. At least the way I look at them. When you look at prairie grouse, it's just wide open expanses of grass where it's just like, well, let's put on 10 miles of boot wear and see what we can run into. In the Northwoods, it's just kind of finding what's your young, 10 to 15-year-old aspen or that type of cover. For pheasants, it's where's the structure? Where's the edge? I'm always looking for structure because they're edge birds. They love that edge habitat. So anytime you can find a piece of grass that has picked egg next to it, that's ding ding ding. Yes, please. Same thing with hedgerows, windbreaks, even terrain features that just break up. A larger WPA. There's some massive waterfowl production areas out there. Use those rings of cattails to your benefit. Find where the terrain breaks and ride that, whether they're depressions or cattail edges or any sort of terrain break is what I instantly key on. And then second to that, then some people might say, well, this should be first is wind. Because I know I'm probably going to be in a field long enough to where I'm going to have to angle against the wind. I'm going to have to play it one way or another. So whether I start with it or against it, I'm not too concerned when I first get out of the truck, knowing that if I thoroughly work this piece of property, I'm going to eventually have it to my advantage. And if I'm smart, maybe I'll have it to my advantage when I hit some internal structure that maybe nobody else has reached. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I don't want brome. I just do not want brome. I will drive way out of my way to avoid brome because it does nobody any good. That's probably the number one thing that I avoid. Everything else is definitely on the table.
So if folks want to go back and watch Aaron's videos, so for two very similar types of cover to look at visually, it's the golden hour hunt on the first day, the plots land, and get a really look at the habitat. Don't worry about the birds and the hunters. Look at the habitat. Weedy, messy, but not super thick. Watch that. The golden hour hunt, video number 1 in North Dakota. And the first field of video number 2 in North Dakota. Look at those and the kosher video, right? So, Andrew talked about structure. Now, structure is cattails and kosher throughout much of the pheasant range. But look at those two to get a sense of the type of habitat we're keying in on, and the birds were there. The birds were absolutely there. Then look at the midday hunt, game production area of day 2. We hunted some cattails, but you mentioned brome. Everything surrounding those cattails in that shelter belt was brome. And there's very few birds. Some birds, I think, they nest in brome, but outside of that, it's a bit of a biological desert. And a lot of, unfortunately, WPAs really need prescribed fire across the Dakotas and Minnesota to get rid of that brome and create a little bit more weedy forb grass landscape that are going to hold birds. But if you want to visually look at it, go to those a couple of sequences and you'll be able to see some of the things that we found birds in, and would be universal. You could find birds in those weedy spots no matter where you're hunting.
Yeah, but you also have to learn as you go. You can't take pheasant hunting as just randomly running into birds here and there. When you find one, take a mental note. What were the conditions and where are you at when you actually found that bird? Because you mentioned both the first and second North Dakota episodes. Well, we really got into them the first day and that first year planting. It was a first year weedy planting. So then what we look for? The next day we started at a first year planting because that's where they were. And the same thing with the cattails. It was way too hot for us to be hunting cattails. I didn't want to be in the cattails. I wanted to avoid the cattails, but that's where we were finding birds. And so while you're traveling around the landscape, if you're hopping from WMA to WMA, if you found a bird in the cattails, well, guess what? You should probably start looking more thoroughly at more properties with cattails. So find those through lines, those threads that can connect everything.
It's the comparison to fishing again. Right, find the pattern, and so many people like, well, fishing, 10 feet of water on the drop off, break point, using, shiners, jigging a minnow, right, or whatever the pattern is that the fish are biting on it in particular. It's the same philosophy when you're talking about hunting. You're just looking for a pattern on how the birds are behaving, what they're relating to structure-wise. It's not a drop-off; it's an edge, right? It's very similar. If you're an angler, you can easily, relatively, use that same thought process and dive into bird hunting.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy because it changes from day to day, just like in fishing. So you have to find what are we keying in on today, and it does change from day to day. So just because there are birds there yesterday, yeah, they're around somewhere, but they might not be right where you found them yesterday.
That same thing can be applied to different food options as well.
Right on. Yep.
So just like fishing.
Yep. And it also makes me think of like fishing when there's a hatch, right? And the birds, the fish are going crazy. The comparison there is when the cornfield is getting harvested right next to it.
If you see a combine ripping through a property next to some public, just hang out.
Just
a while.
hunt that.
Yeah, just hang out a while. Just make sure your reservations are made for the golden hour that evening, and be on time.
All right, controversial question, or not controversial, but this is a little bit more of a challenge to answer. Sean Sullivan writes in, how do you make the decision to pass by a public field that has other hunters on it? Is there a certain size of the group or distance that you make room for another group? Ooh, that's a challenging question to answer. All right, so Logan, you're going to tackle that one first.
Okay, yeah, it's a great question. Personally, for me, if I'm going to hunt a particular public land piece and there's a vehicle at an access point, I usually just opt to go down the road and look for the next available public land piece. That's just how I operate. That you could look at a map and say, well, maybe there's a major split within that property, where there's a south access and a north access, and it's several, 100 acres, even 1,000 acres, and there's a definitive break through the middle of that property where you could go into the north and hunt it without, affecting, the group that's maybe on the south end of that property, then maybe I would. But typically, I'm just going to go down the road and look for a spot that's available.
So, Aaron, you grew up hunting out west, which the landscape's a little bit different. But you've also been along for a lot of trips with a lot of hunters over the last couple of years. What's your feel for this on sensibilities? And is there a universal, because you've hunted Road Trip, you've hunted, all sorts of groups for videos with Pheasants Forever.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of with Logan just as a hunting, methodology. It's better just to kind of be by yourself to some degree if you can. The other side of that is Rooster Road Trip is a bit of a production. We did bring, a couple trucks, a fair amount of people, dogs. So it's good to find those spots where we can go out and do our thing. Yeah. But, everyone's just got to figure out what they are comfortable with and what their group is comfortable with and, make it happen. And, growing up hunting, we hunted really isolated steep country and draws, and mostly trucker country. And you can get a little tighter with more people in there because, you could be one canyon over and you won't even hear that person's gun go off,
Right.
it's just a lot more tight. Maybe the grouse woods is maybe a little similar where you're so compacted in there and, in all this thick cover that it doesn't make that much of an issue.
Yeah. Well, the challenge there is you might be right around the corner from somebody, but you can't see the landscape to know where they are.
Or you didn't even know they were there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, when it comes to pheasant hunting, I agree with you and Logan, just create as much space as possible. At minimum, I like to be a mile away and thinking about, a person can walk a mile, casually in about an hour, right? With dog, and maybe that's even a little lengthy, right? You can probably walk a mile quicker than that, but give them some space and some time.
And I think the key thing there too is to do your homework. We have all these tools now, Google Maps, Onyx, all these, things. So make a game plan, make, plan A, plan B, plan C, that if you do roll up to your, your first spot, you already have that next one in mind, where you're like, well, I got this other one, dialed up right here. Let's go over to that waypoint. So yeah, do your homework.
I think it's more nuanced than that, though. Like you can't, it's so based on your landscape where you are. A Minnesota attitude is much different than a Montana attitude, and that's all due to the property sizes that you're walking. Where we call home Minnesota, it's fairly easy for us to be like, okay, I can see a majority of this property, and someone's on it. I can go find something else. But out west, there are only so many opportunities and so many entry points in terms of like trailheads that sometimes you do get stacked up with, 5 different groups in one area, but the property's so big that as long as you mind your space, who cares? We've all been hunting out west where you come up over a ridge and someone's right there and you didn't even know they were there. And that's fine. Just give them the nod and go your separate way. There's a balance because it's everyone's public land. And I've had it both ways. I've had people literally start before, like as my wife and I were getting ready, close enough to where if I were to take a shot, I probably could have sprayed them. Like that's a little too close. I think like just have common sense. If it feels weird, it probably is weird. Like just follow your gut. But these properties are big enough and nobody's touching all of them to where like just because somebody's hunting a 400-acre complex, oh, that's mine. That's not the right attitude either. There is actually a room for people. You just have to show respect, give people space, and actually use them to your advantage sometimes. I mean, because they're going to be kicking birds over to areas where they're not even hunting. Be respectful, be smart. It's everyone's public land. Just because someone's there doesn't mean like you can't be. You just have to show respect.
Or here's a novel thought: talk to them.
Well, I was going to say, in Minnesota, like if I see them, I'll wait for them to get back to the truck. If I know I've been driving around and access can be a limiting issue, 100%. That's why we work in the business we do to create more access. If I'm striking out at WMA after WMA after WMA, if I see one I really like, I'll camp out. And I'll give them their business. I'll give them their space. I'm not going to park in right behind them, but I'll wait on the corner and I'll watch them and I'll see what they're hunting. And I guarantee they're not going to touch everything there. And I'll wait for them to roll up. And I'll be like, are you guys done hunting this? And I'll go, how'd it go? I'll be like, yep, we're out of here. And then they'll look at me like I'm crazy because I'll pull in right behind them, cut my dogs loose, and I have shot birds within 50 yards of a group pulling out before. And like I know they watched me do it, and it gave me a weird sense of satisfaction. But it's probably pride in the dog more than anything else. But just because people are there doesn't mean that you can't be or you shouldn't be. Just be respectful.
Well, yeah. When I said communicate, I was like, you get to the parking spot at the beginning, like there's no rule against, okay, you guys want to go this way, we're going to go that way, and make a game plan together, just like we do on Rooster Road Trip with multiple, like a big group breaking into two. There's, just be courteous, All right. Let's see. Adam Kadrilik. Sorry, Adam. Hopefully I pronounced your name. What is the best way to get intel on good public land to hunt when coming from out of state? Is it just a crapshoot, or are there resources and tools that will better your chance for success? And similar question. Dale writes in, Rooster Road Trip has the advantage of working with biologists to pick hunting locations. What suggestions do you have for the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever audience to help them find birdie places to hunt when they're traveling from out of state? It's a really good question. I'm sure we all have some different thoughts and strategies that we put into place. We'll start with Andrew. What do you think?
I mean, everywhere we went this year started off based on what I read in our own pheasant hunting forecast, which is available to everybody. Every fall, we kick out a prairie grouse primer and a pheasant hunting and quail hunting forecast. We try and include every single state that has reasonable hunting opportunities in it. That's how we ended up in Southwest North Dakota. I wasn't planning this a year in advance because I don't want to make our lives even more difficult by putting us in an area that I personally might want to get to because it has a couple stories, or it'll be, beautiful from a cinematic aspect. I want to go where the birds are, just like everybody else. So use that resource first and foremost. We put a lot of work into that, and that does include reaching out to local biologists, both at the state level and our own internal team. So there's your little biologist insider right there via the pheasant hunting forecast. From there, it's a lot of pre-scouting on Google Maps or Garmin Bird's Eye satellite. There's a lot of tools out there for people to actually, once you have the general area, where is there the most public access? Where can we have the most opportunity? Because we will strike out in terms of people already hunting ground that is too small for us to join or we don't want to deal with. So what are the hot spots of public access where we can theoretically check out 5 properties in the morning if we have to? I really don't want to put us on an island and put all of our chips in one spot. And I suggest you don't do that otherwise. And to Dale's comment about having the advantage of biologists, yes and no. For sure, we definitely make phone calls and try and figure out what does it look like in your area. But by no means are we just having our hands held by biologists and be like, okay, you're gonna go hunt this field and I'm gonna go hunt that field, and then a golden hour they're all gonna be stacked up here. That's not how it works, man. I'm sorry. I wish it was, because that'd be awesome. That'd be a lot of fun. The free guided hunt. For sure, we're using their local knowledge to our advantage. We had probably throughout the entire trip, we had 3 distinct properties where a biologist was like, I really want to hit this one. Other than that, it's groupthink. It's what are we seeing on the landscape? Where are we finding birds? Where do we want to go to next? It's a group conversation as we're all looking at the same maps and learning from where we're finding birds previously, just like we've already discussed. Where should we go next? So the last thing I want people to think is that we're 100% being put on birds every single walk, because if that's the case, our bird numbers are way too low. That's not doing anybody any good in terms of they can only find 4 birds in South Dakota. Holy cow! That's not happening.
So 2 additional thoughts, because I think you nailed it. But 2 other thoughts. When you go to a place for the first time, if your expectation is that you're going to bang out limits of pheasants and quail the very first trip, then your eyes are bigger than your stomach, because you need to go into a new place trying to figure it out, figuring out the birds, figuring out the terrain, figuring out the habitat, figuring out, is the corn harvested here? I mean, you're driving around, you're really trying to decipher some things. And by year 2 of that trip, it gets a little better. Year 3, it becomes a tradition, and you start figuring out the keys to success. So if you're going into a trip expecting bag limits, go find a preserve. Because you're not going to be able to do that on the road trip, on a road trip anywhere. And that's okay. Use the trip for like you would any sort of vacation, tourism, right? Like, think about the landscape, eating something different, enjoying the all the amenities of experiencing a new place. The other point, and I mentioned tourism, don't be afraid to call the Convention and Visitors Bureau of a particular area. And I'm thinking about you right now, Casey Wiesmantle in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And same thing, like my family grouse camp is being sold this year, and we need to find a new place to go grouse hunting. So who would I call? I called Joe Henry at Lake of the Woods Tourism. Like, where should I figure out a grouse camp? If you're going to pheasant country, if you're going to quail country, don't hesitate to call the Convention and Visitors Bureau. You find a hunter that wants to pull people into a particular area and will help them find success. So a couple additional thoughts.
Yeah, I really, like the timeline you set there. And sometimes that's realistic and sometimes it's not, because if you're traveling from Kentucky and going to North Dakota for your first time and you may never get to do that again, yeah, you want to find birds, and we hope you find birds, and you probably will find birds. But this, like, the first year is almost, you're scouting more at the truck. You're looking at properties, you're figuring out like what looks good, where should we even start. From there, like you're scouting with your boots. And along the way, you're going to find birds. And then between that year 2, year 3, in terms of going back to an area, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, well, then you're hitting the ground running. So it definitely takes time. So just having realistic expectations and just knowing that the whole point of this is to cut your dogs loose and have fun. And that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. All right. Emily Dyer writes in, what advice do you have for a new hunter going on a road trip? I've gone out pheasant hunting a few times and I haven't hit a bird yet. The opportunities have been there. I just get nervous. Around the horn, let's start with Aaron. What would you advice you offer a new hunter who's trying to put the recipe together?
Wow, there's a couple different things. Finding mentors and people to go hunting with, I think, is huge, but it's also really hard, but there are things out there, apps and tools and, social media and stuff that can help you do that. You just have to maybe step out of your comfort zone a little bit and send people a message, call the tourism board, like things like you're saying, and, try to find those people or enlist a friend. Maybe you have someone that, is in your circle that you're like, hey, I really want to go do this. Will you come with me? And just to kind of provide that extra bit of, security and comfort along your trip. Past that is, just like we've been doing, I think, a good job of creating media, your podcasts, in specific, of, talking about these types of things and, putting a ton of information out there. And, so just to kind of become a student of what it is you want to learn and realize that, yeah, you do have to learn a lot and it's going to take time and you're probably going to have to, put your time in, and there's a learning curve to everything.
Right,
so
right.
Just
Patience.
embrace that, I guess.
Yeah. Logan.
Yeah, I think, we probably put a lot of internal pressures on ourselves when we're in the field. I don't necessarily think bagging a bird needs to be the, define success. And I think a lot of times you can, and I need to be better about it too. You just need to take pressure off yourself and find other things that define success while you're in the field. And usually when you take some of those pressures off, things start happening naturally.
Andrew?
But at the same time, we're there to find birds.
Yeah.
We're there to put them in the pot. So I get it.
You're always contrarian.
And yeah, but
illustrates the difference.
100% right.
Yep.
Like it's more than just that, but we're also out there for a very specific reason. And I hate to gloss that over and like pretend that we're higher than we're not here just to find birds. Well, yeah, it's more than that, but at the core of it, we are there to find birds too. And so there's no point in like hiding that. It's just how does it all work together? That can definitely be the focus but it doesn't need to be everything.
Mhm.
And I think that's a great point that Logan's bringing up. Emily, it sounds like you're already getting into the chips a little bit. You've had opportunities, just been nervous. It's just like any other skill in life. Repetition, repetition, repetition. It'll happen. I guarantee for you, it'll happen. If you're having these opportunities already, the rush of the flush is what we're all about. It should make you nervous. It should make you excited. Like, it catches us all off guard from time to time. Bob, I was with you in the grouse woods earlier this year where I let out a screech that I'm embarrassed of.
I do remember that.
But we all get caught off guard and flustered, and then you take a shot that you think is in the general direction of what just scared the bejesus out of you.
Yeah.
But enjoy those opportunities, that nervous energy, that excitement. Like, that's kind of like the drug that keeps us coming back. So you don't want that just to disappear. It's just the more repetitions you have, the more you'll be able to kind of control that a little bit and still enjoy those moments.
Yeah. One advice that I'd throw out, Emily, is go by yourself a little. I think when you're alone and you don't have a camera watching over you or an audience, it sort of takes out pressure. You can be just within your own self. And I bet you that excitement in a good way doesn't translate to nervousness as much. And if you can get comfortable enough knowing, you're safe with your firearm, you're safe knowing the rules, you're comfortable, using your GPS and trek out on your own. And I think you'll find some success that way too. And that bridges into a question. And I'm going to hop to questions that were specifically asked of our female participants, Marissa and Renee and Emily, for Rooster Road Trip. So Andrea writes in, what advice do you have to navigate a mostly male-dominated sport? And here's Marissa's answer. Great question. I spent most of my early days hunting solo, because that's where I felt I most belonged. I still love my time in the uplands, but I found a lot of great individuals to hunt alongside over the years. Women hunters are growing across the country, but we want to continue to see this growth until it's off the charts. My biggest advice for you or any hunter out there is to stay true to yourself. Never compromise your goals or comfort on any hunt, regardless of who you are around. And Renee adds, keep getting out there, enjoying it and learning and enjoying the process. Surround yourself with people you want to be in the field with and have the same ethos as you, male or female. Life's truly too short to pay any attention to folks who may not be accepting of women hunters or who make derogatory comments, harm intended or not. Help create an upland community. Our Women on the Wing chapters are building strong networks of outdoors women all across the country, and you can help. You can look up Women on the Wing. That's the program that Marissa quarterbacks for us, and there's a Women on the Wing chapter that Renee works with in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'll hop back to a women specific question here in a moment, but in the meantime, we're going to go to the gear section. Kyle McCracken writes, besides your gun and dog, what's the piece of gear you never forget? We're going to go to the video production specialist. You going to bring your camera?
Well, I mean, speaking as a hunter, I think having a solid pair of boots is key, and I remember my photography instructor, Ralph Clevenger, back in the day, he's like, the most important piece of photography equipment you have is what's on your feet. It's going to put you into that F8 and be there situation, because you don't want to be hopping around in a pair of sandals, or whatever the case may be. You want to be able to move over the terrain anywhere you want to go. That said, having a second pair of boots is probably a good idea too, because eventually your feet are going to get wet or whatever's going to happen. Past that, I'm a big fan of just, being prepared, having those little tools like the multi-tool or extra water. I carried a Camelback on this road trip, and I was actually really glad I did, because, my hands are always full of stuff, gear and whatnot. Same thing if you're carrying a shotgun and, controlling your Garmin e-collar and all that stuff too. You want to have that hands free. So I actually really enjoyed the Camelback. That's just that's just me.
Mhm.
But yeah, just be prepared.
Good pair of boots is a real solid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I would, and then definitely, take the time to break them in. That's part of, spending that time during the summer to get out to the Clays course, to get some rounds off, go out and run your dogs, hike those fields, get yourself more or less, physically and somewhat mentally ready for opening day.
Logan, dog, gun, boots.
Gotta have ammo. That's too easy. Yeah. Besides the core things that we'd bring in the field, I've really come accustomed to wearing my SoundGear hearing protection. I've had the InstaFits and now the custom molded ones, and yeah, it's weird being in the field for me without that. You only get one set of ears, and being able to protect that, plus the enhancement that I get by wearing those. It's one piece that, like I said, when I hit the field and I forget them and don't have them in, I feel off.
Cool. Andrew?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm lucky enough to have the SoundGear Phantoms, which is like the world's first Bluetooth compatible, hearing aid and protection enhancement. And they're sweet, right? They're awesome. Can use them in the gym, can use them in the field. It's great. But I happened to lose them. And the first day of Rooster Road Trip, I was I had them around my lanyard, and we were having a discussion, and I don't know what I was thinking, but we hopped this creek again 15 times. If you're following along, this one field ate my lunch. And I remember hopping a creek. I remember tearing my pants wide open because, I'm just that big of an athlete that I just was that powerful. And then I made it all the way back to the truck and realized my sound gears are gone. And without those, I honestly am to the point where I don't like pulling the trigger if I don't have them. It really bothers me. So then we're lucky enough, and I will fully admit we are blessed with the road trip to be sponsored by amazing companies that provide us gear. And I had an extra pair of instant fits in the truck. And that was actually my first time using them, and I loved them. I basically set them and forget them type deal all day. So I was super impressed with those. So just to piggyback on Logan's comment, other than that, I know that you shouldn't use e-collars and GPSs as a crutch. 100%. Every dog trainer in the world will say you start with basic obedience. Then you start with following commands in the field. And then you can introduce a training collar and a GPS device, because you shouldn't rely on that first. You need a well-trained dog that you trust before you even do anything like that. Well, me and my adopted little knucklehead aren't quite there. So just having a GPS unit that allows me to know, okay, my dog is 80 yards down the line for me, but going off his direction heading and where he's at in relation to other hunters, he's hunting. He's well within where he should be for other people to give them a chance. That allowed my kind of control freakish anxiety just to mellow. It's like, okay, he's not working for me, but he is working, for Logan or Bob down the line. So just even having that comfort in addition to the, you're not going to lose your dog type mentality, because you got to come home healthy and you got to come home in general. I say this all the time. I don't know how people used to do this, even 10 years ago. Bells are great in the grouse woods, and I love the music that they make, but it's like, how did we function without GPSs? And I guess I'm just completely fallen into that, and I don't care, because it makes me comfortable, and if I'm comfortable, I'm happy, and if I'm happy, I'm having a good time, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, and you guys have touched on, we got a whole series of questions from Tyler, Tom Prasa, Nathan, Renee Wilson, asking about technology. And we mentioned SoundGear, we mentioned the Garmin, the watch, the GPS units. Anything we missed technology wise, Aaron, that you think about from your point of view? So here's what I'm thinking: bring your phone on airplane mode and take some darn pictures, because the landscapes, particularly in the golden hour, when you do find success with a dog and a bird, take the time to snap a picture, and you don't have to be a video production specialist.
And Logan does a great job of balancing the camera on one hip and a shotgun in his hand, you know, and
Yeah.
him and I are both fans of these certain camera straps. They're Black Rapid crossbody straps, and they just, you know, the camera just hangs at your side. You can pick it up one-handed and shoot with it. If you need to drop it, just drop it. It goes right back down to your hip, and you know, they're super helpful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you take photos and never miss, Logan?
Oh, I miss plenty. But it, you know, it's for me being able to be, you know, as a photographer and a hunter, for me being able to be like, you know, a part of the group in the hunt. I just feel like I'm in it, and I feel like I can capture things that are happening during the hunt that maybe I wouldn't if I was 30 yards behind. You know, and I enjoy that process and capturing those moments, and you know, just you kind of learn. You know, I have trust in my dog. You know, I know how he operates, so that helps, because that's another element is, you know, I'm also dog handling.
That's true.
So
Dog handling, shooting, and photography,
it's just a lot, and I
you
feel
have
like,
to think at the same time.
But if you're in the group dynamic and you're in the hunt, I just feel like things just happen naturally.
Yeah.
And you just see things differently. I don't know. It works for me, but little things like the sling, you know, it slings the camera away from my mounting shoulder, so that helps, and it's always there. I can grab, you know, I try to have my settings set so I can just quickly snap the photo and then get back to the hunt. Just
You're
little things like that.
supremely talented at what you do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun to try juggling it all.
All right, let me answer on behalf of Marissa. Another question directed at our women participants. Nathan Roberts writes in, where do you find quality functional clothing for the female bird hunter? And Marissa answers, hands down, this is my biggest struggle, and in particular, finding upland pants for women. It's all about the pants, Marissa writes, and Browning has nailed it with their women's brush pants. I love the chocolate color so that nobody can tell how many days I've worn them, and they keep me cool enough in the hot September sandhills for grouse, and warm enough, and sometimes with an additional layer in late season of January in Nebraska, where I live and hunt. They've really held up in some nasty cover. So there's Marissa's answer on women's clothing. We're gonna jump to a couple of mixed bag, miscellaneous potpourri questions here. This is a favorite one for me because Hunter was in my vehicle, and I know what our soundtrack of the Rooster Road Trip was, but I have no idea what you guys were listening to. What was the soundtrack of the Rooster Road Trip? Were you guys listening to music, to books, to podcasts? What got you 10 hours to a very far western North Dakota?
You want to take that one?
All of the above.
Okay.
You know, it's a lot of podcasts when it comes to, or audiobooks when it comes to just getting there, because you just kind of want that time to fly by as quickly as possible. When it comes to actually, you know, going from field to field, hunt to hunt, I don't know, Logan and I aren't jamming out like other folks are, but I will say
he was looking at you, Aaron, when he said
Aaron's
that.
the metalhead. That's and Bob's got his '90s grunge, so we know what's going on in those trucks. For me, one moment that stood out, and I'm sure like Logan's like, what is going on with this guy right now? We were driving through the glacial lakes region of South Dakota on our second day, and we had just, you know, gotten through that huge weather system that moved in and just kind of absolutely socked us in, basically blew up our day. And then we were heading south, cutting through all these huge pockets of lakes as the mist was rising up and the sun was rising. And I had to rip on Gordon Lightfoot's 7 Island Suite. I was just like, woo, yeah.
It's truth.
Were you jamming with them, or were you like, what on earth?
Yeah,
I always find it incongruent with the personality that Andrew has.
Yeah,
he likes Gordon Lightfoot
it
so
threw me
much.
off.
I'm a huge Gordon Bobo.
When it wasn't podcast rolling, it was that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it worked.
I'm glad we didn't wreck the Edmund Fitzgerald.
I mean, if you want to do some Steely
Oh,
Dan,
gosh.
Hall & Oates, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Young, I mean, I might only be 35, but my music taste says otherwise.
All right, drop some metal on us. What were you listening to?
I wasn't really listening to metal. I was rolling around with Marissa from most of the time, and we had the Lithium channel from Sirius XM playing pretty much like
Lithium's good,
nonstop, just singing along and talking about, growing up in the 90s, because her and I are roughly about the same age, I think. And we had a blast.
I subjected Hunter to, we listened to a lot of John R. Miller, who's kind of a Appalachian Tyler Childers sort of Americana, who's just love him. And then Keith McCafferty's fly fishing murder series. And Keith McCafferty's a Field and Stream outdoor freelance writer who I got to hunt with in Montana a few years back. Actually, Trammell was like a year old, and I got to hunt with Keith in Montana. And he's written a series of murder mysteries set in Montana. And Hunter would jump from one vehicle to the next and come back like 8 chapters later and say, "What's going on?" So we listened to a few books. All right. So overarching question written in by, let's see, Jason Landerson. Okay, we're heading towards the finale here. So this is a big question. Did the Rooster Road Trip participants feel the bird numbers were better than expected across the region, so North Dakota, South Dakota, than anticipated based upon the forecasts? So, Andrew, you talked about the forecast coming into it, that we've had multiple episodes of this podcast focused on the drought and what that means for birds. Now that we've got the road trip under us, you've got multiple trips to the Dakotas. What's your take on the bird numbers this season?
Well, you nailed the fact that leading up to September and October, drought was the sexy topic, which kind of paints a little bit of a doom and gloom atmosphere, no matter how optimistic you are, because you're kind of leading into the season with some apprehension of, we'll see what happens. And honestly, that's how we looked at the Rooster Road Trip.
Mm-hmm.
If the story was going to be, there's a lot of emergency haying and grazing going on. It's necessary. It happens. And it's up to us as flexible hunters to deal with it and find the habitat that's holding birds. That's kind of the mental attitude I had going into it. I was pleasantly surprised in both North Dakota and South Dakota with what we encountered. A lot of young birds still in North Dakota, which speaks to, re-nesting and a second hatch. Bob, I think you and I both agreed that on one of those properties, that was probably the most public land birds we've ever seen in one property.
Yep.
And it was evident that area was hammered by a drought. We did a lot of truck scouting in terms of like, where can we even find enough grass to not only produce a couple birds, but be big enough for a large group to walk around for long enough to tell a good story too. So I was definitely surprised in a positive way, but it also just goes to show, like, just get out there. Like, yes, use the forecast as a tool. Yes, you want to put yourself in the best spot possible to have success in the field. But at the end of the day, like, you don't know till you go. And so if you're hedging like your fall adventures based on someone else's perceptions, don't. Just go do it. Go hit the road. Have fun. That's the whole point of this entire Rooster Road Trip, is to inspire people that are no better than us or worse than us to get out there and give it a try, because you never know what you're going to find. And chances are you're going to be surprised in a positive way. And I know that's how I felt.
Yeah. Logan?
Yeah, I would, exactly like Andrew said. We saw some emergency hay and grazing in North Dakota, but it didn't derail our trip by any stretch of the imagination. We found plenty of birds, plenty of places to hunt. South Dakota, we hit a stretch of bad weather, which obviously impacted our hunting, but the habitat there was phenomenal. I didn't see any signs of it. It was plenty wet, plenty of birds, plenty of ground to hunt.
Yeah.
And to Andrew's point, you just got to get out and go.
Yep. Third person agreeing. I've had 2 trips to North Dakota, 2 trips to South Dakota, and multiple trips to Minnesota, and particularly sharptails and pheasants. And same thing, we've seen emergency haying and grazing, which is quickly eliminated some public land spots from, wearing out any boot leather. You go find where the habitat is, and there's a lot of birds there. They're going to be concentrated, and they're probably going to be pushed around. And as you get to late season, you got to play the game a little bit differently. But you go to that quality habitat, you're going to find birds. And, as we record here at the end of November, and it's a high of 27 today, I know that the sloughs are starting to freeze across the Dakotas, across Minnesota and Iowa and pheasant country. And that's going to change the game. We've had some snow. That snow's melted, which is fun circumstances because you get multiple first snows of the year. And for whatever reason, pheasants get paralyzed when they encounter that first snow. And even if it's the third snow, but it's been melted, you can do it multiple times. So there's birds to be had. And, a lot of hunters will not go out again in December. And that's a mistake. There's going to be a lot of birds to be had late season. All right. Final thanks. Our corporate partners who have ridden shotgun, not only this year, but for 12 years running, to all those companies that have helped make this a very lucrative revenue stream for our organization's habitat mission. This year's Rooster Road Trip partners: Browning, Garmin, Apple Autos, Ruff Land Kennels, SoundGear, Thorogood Boots, South Dakota Tourism, and Federal Premium Ammunition. Thanks for supporting our conservation efforts and for helping us bring Rooster Road Trip to the masses, and hopefully inspiring you, the viewer, and the listener to go out and do a Rooster Road Trip of your own. Andrew, got a cool membership promotion going on right now. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Browning field knife is what we're calling it, but really it's more of a fin and feather style. So it's perfect for your upland birds, and it'll also work in your tackle box just as well. Comes with a great sheath. It's branded Pheasants Forever. It's exclusive to us. So head to roosterroadtrip.org and become a member, renew your membership, or extend your membership, and get yourself a solid Browning knife.
And while you're there, sign up to win. Logan, have you parted with the shotgun yet?
I did. I gave it back. Believe it or not.
I got it back from him real quick because I did not have faith that it wouldn't just continue its adventures through the uplands.
Yeah, I was figuring it was going to go to Nebraska before it went back.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen this year. So
And you normally don't shoot a semi-auto either, right?
No, I don't. I did take my sling off of it though, so whoever wins that shotgun is not getting my sling. No, you'll enjoy it.
Head to roosterroadtrip.org again, and all you have to do is fill out a form. It's as simple as that. No strings attached. Just get your name in the running, and we'll be drawing for that around December 13th or thereabouts.
All right, December 13th for the deadline for the Browning Maxis. And please, we're a conservation organization. We're a nonprofit, and we need people that are watching and listening and following along to become members. And that $35 is tax deductible, and it goes to a good cause. It goes to our ability to create more habitat and public access for everybody, whether you chase pheasants, chase quail, or just enjoy wildlife and nature with a camera or your own set of eyes. Please join Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever. $35 a year. You'll get a subscription to our journal, and if you sign up through Rooster Road Trip, you'll get that Browning knife that Andrew talked about. All right, around the horn. Closing thoughts. We've reached the end of the road. We're almost home on the old Garmin, Montana GPS. We're closing in on our home driveways. We're going to start with Aaron. What's your cherry on the top of the sundae for Rooster Road Trip 2021? What's your final thought?
Well, as Andrew mentioned, this is our 12th season doing it. And I just want to thank the viewers and the listeners for being patient with us this year as we did a more extended rollout of the media. It gave us a lot more time to create a more polished product, tell a better story, hopefully. So thank you all. I encourage you to go to the YouTube page, click subscribe, and we're going to keep rolling out more great content, in the months and years to come. And I'm just excited. Let's just keep doing cool stuff.
Well, it's I do want to publicly say that. I mean, by far the best videos that we've ever produced, and part of it is you had the advantage of time that no other video production specialist.
I don't know if people fully realize the old road trip style and what that entailed.
So tell them the old road trip style.
Well, the old road trip style was that we would hunt until Andrew was like, okay, we got a couple birds, and we're going to skip out on the afternoon golden hour, which makes me cringe, but we're going to head back to the hotel.
It makes you cringe not only from the bird numbers, but it's beautiful light, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like if you see that first episode when we were hunting in North Dakota and we were walking next to that river, and as the sun was going down, we were still putting birds up, and the images, that's the kind of thing that gets me really excited as a photographer and videographer. But in days past, or in years past, they would, have to hustle back to the hotel because they had to record a podcast. They had to write the blog stories, edit the photos, and edit a video all in the space of an evening, often staying up till 2 a.m. And then rushing to go find, some Wi-Fi out in the middle of, North Dakota, South Dakota, wherever they were, and upload that stuff to get it, ready for the audience that day. And, I think audiences have come to realize or come to expect that, some of these things take a little bit of time to, to create a little bit better product, and they're fine with waiting. Everyone's on the episode train, waiting for their next show to come out. And so we're just joining that group.
Did you feel more pressure because there was more time?
No.
Really?
Okay. I think with this type of shooting, this kind of run and gun style where you're still out there, and, big shout out to Hunter Booth. He's actually running these 3 cameras we got out here right now. He came on board and, kind of took him under my wing and put a camera in his hands and was like, all right, dude, go for it. Let's see what happens. So having a second shooter was great, and, just gave us a lot more material to work with.
Yeah.
And, I think once you get in your groove, either hunting or filming or shooting photos, it might take you a day or 2 to kind of get in that groove. But once you do, it's good. As long as your gear is, set up, you got to prepare, you got to make plans, make sure you have everything, charge your batteries, all that stuff ahead of time. And it just sets you up for success.
Yeah.
And, big shout out to the crew too, for being supportive and, waiting for the camera guys to, get their boots on, and all that stuff. So, thank you guys for sure.
Well, great work. Turned out wonderfully.
Thank you.
Logan, closing thoughts for you.
Just had a blast again. Honestly, I love the adventure side of it. Just being on the road, traveling, seeing new country. I've been to Dakotas before. It's been several years since I've hunted either state, so it's always fun to get back and hunt with new people, like-minded people, new dogs, just the whole thing. I just have a blast with it, and it's always something I look forward to each year. Unrelated note, just when Aaron was talking, one thing that popped in my head is like a must-have for a road trip is a power strip. And I say that like in the hotel room, you're limited on outlets. You got your dog GPS collars, you got cell phones, all the electronics, and I've just found like that power strip. Gotta have it.
Yeah. Andrew, great job changing the format. I've tracked along through our social media channels, and I haven't seen a single negative comment about feedback, and it's been rave reviews on this episodic, to bring it full circle, Rooster Road Trip design. What's your final take?
Yeah, that's one of the points I want to get to here. First and foremost, it's just 12 years doing this, and another year where I'm just so thoroughly impressed with our coworkers and volunteers and members that we meet up with in the field each and every year. This year was no different. It just makes me so proud to work for Pheasants Forever and to actually see the work that our chapters and our membership dollars are accomplishing, like out on the landscape. It's just, we're so lucky. Like, first and foremost, I just have to thoroughly admit that, I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet to be able to work for such a great organization and be able to do this and hopefully inspire others to go take advantage of the same areas and opportunities that we did. The upland landscapes can't be taken for granted. No, they have to be fought for. We have to keep our finger on the pulse. You have to get out there and go enjoy it. Go see what we're talking about. Go take a risk. Throw a dart at a map and see where you end up. Have an adventure, have fun, get out there, plan your own Rooster Road Trip. There's so many opportunities and exciting things just waiting for you out there. All you have to do is go. And that's all I want people to do, because selfishly, the more people that get out there and try this and have fun and have these great experiences, the more they'll care, the more they'll be engaged with conservation or upland conservation mission. And I want that.
Yeah.
I will thoroughly admit that. Selfishly, I want more supporters of Pheasants Forever and our mission. And that will come as more people get out there on their own Rooster Road Trips. So get after it. That said, we may not have seen a much negative commentary on social media or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that I'm, thoroughly stubborn in terms of this is the way it'll be forever. So this is my request to anybody who's still out there listening or watching. As you go through our content on roosterroadtrip.org, or you check out our YouTube page, and please like and subscribe. I'm going to throw that out there again. Let me know what you think. avavra@pheasantsforever.org. So A, V's in Victor, A, V's in Victor, R-A. My dad would be so proud I said it that way. I personally want to know. Just because we changed it up doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. Maybe everybody does actually prefer the 5 days of madness and us losing sleep and just throwing stuff out there willy-nilly because it's live. Or maybe they do prefer, the nice polish that we're able to put on these stories and being able to spend actually more time in the field versus half days, which I don't think most people really understood. I want that feedback. I want to continue to have this grow, and I want people to be inspired to get out there. So let me know what you think. Good, bad, otherwise. How'd your own Rooster Road Trip go? I want to hear from you.
You wrote, and this, I think it was in our final email blast, blog post, "The call of the uplands isn't a siren song. It's a feeling of wanderlust that compels us to spend time with good friends and better dogs in landscapes that should never be taken for granted." So in one sentence, that kind of summarizes what you articulated so eloquently. This we're in the middle of Call the Uplands campaign. Our organization's line in the sand to protect the grasslands and the uplands and the quail savannas and the sagebrush lands that are disappearing faster than any ecosystem on the planet, and they're in our own backyards. And Rooster Road Trip's just another way that we can utilize our platform to highlight those losses and the gem that is the uplands that's disappearing before our eyes as this generation. So I'll double down on Andrew's comment. Get out there. If no other reason than you want to become a better upland hunter, there's no better way to become a better upland hunter than to experience a new bird or a different landscape. Your dog will learn quicker than you will. I can testify to that. But you will become a better hunter if you step outside your comfort zone and learn to hunt some new terrain. And you know what? It is as thrilling as a vacation that you take. You see new places, eat new food, you meet new people, and you'll have the time of your life. All right, folks. Rooster Road Trip 2021, the Dakotas edition, number 12. That's a wrap. In the meantime, I'm Bob St. Pierre reminding you to always follow the dog. Even if Andrew tells you not to, always follow the dog. Something good will rise. Thank you so much for following along. And please become a member at roosterroadtrip.org.